Today is the biggest gathering of the anti-austerity movement since the start of the financial crisis over 5 years ago. Over 4,000 people have registered to be here today, but we represent the views of millions. We have pulled together the broadest possible group of people nationally to organise this event and have already started that process across the country with huge meetings and rallies in a number of places. It's important to stress that today is just the start. I'd like to welcome now to open the conference someone who has worked so hard in the last few weeks to make sure this event is as big as possible, someone who has travelled up and down the country speaking at rallies and meetings almost every night, and someone who has been central to putting this project together. Please give a massive welcome to Owen.
Miserable years, the cheerleaders of the disaster austerity have hogged the conversation. But we're here today to deliver our message, loudly, clearly, defiantly. It's our turn now. Friends, we all have many different reasons for being here. I hope we get to all share them today. I think of a few reasons why I think so many thousands of people have descended on central London. A year ago, I met a young woman, no older than her early 20s, she was unhappy. She had a little girl. She'd been desperately looking for work in a country where 45 people are chasing every low-skilled job. Now, her housing benefit had been slashed, punishing her for the rip-off rents charged by her private landlord. Thrown out of her home, she's been forced to raise a little kid in sheltered accommodation. But she wasn't some passive victim. She wanted to fight back. And that's why we're here, to say enough is enough. We're going to fight back. Now friends, we're here for 500,000 people who are now dependent on one of the only booming industries in this country, food banks. We're here for supermarket workers and call centre workers, lying in bed at night, wondering how they're going to have to choose between heating their homes and feeding their kids as their tax credits are slashed. We're here for disabled people, forced into a degrading and dehumanising assessment by Atos. We're here for a million young people now out of work facing a future of debt, of insecurity and poverty. We're here for 6.5 million people looking for full-time work, like the 645 people this month alone who applied for one single job in Hull. We're here for the 25,000 elderly people who freeze to death in their homes every single year because they can't afford to heat their homes. And we're here for people who keep Britain ticking on a daily basis, working people, the real wealth creators who face the biggest cuts in modern life. We're here for 5 million people trapped on social housing waiting lists, all those languishing in overcrowded homes, all those facing extortionate rents at the hands of our landlords. With such injustice, no wonder there's so much anger. But friends, no wonder that this government has tried to redirect that anger from those at the top who cause this crisis to people's neighbours down the streets, the working poor against the unemployed, non-disabled people against disabled people, private sector workers against public sector workers, those living here against immigrants. And each time the argument is the same. You've been mugged, so your less deserving neighbour should be mugged as well. And friends, the reality is this: there's no shortage of anger out there. no shortage of fear, but there's one thing missing, and that's hope. And it was Harvey Milk, the crusading US civil rights campaigner, who said this: "I know you cannot live on hope alone, but without it life is not worth living." And the truth is this: it doesn't matter how angry people get, it doesn't matter how scared people get, if they don't have hope, they don't fight back, they become resigned, they join the biggest party in the country, they yell at the TV every time Judge Osborne appears party. Don't get me wrong, it's a really good party, but they don't fight back, or their anger is directed against their neighbour. And that's where we come in. We've got to give hope. And we do that first by giving answers. People have every right to be furious about the £23 billion spent on housing benefit every single year. But that's not lining the pockets of the tenants. It's lining the pockets of private landlords charging extortionate rents.
As they fought for the rights of women,
The Britain are anti-racist activists who fought courageously against prejudice and discrimination, of LGBT activists who are spat at and sneered as they campaigned for the same rights as everybody else. The peace movement who fought against bombs and bullets and young men being maimed and injured in unjust wars in foreign lands. These are our traditions. These are the traditions this People's Assembly must stand in. Understanding social change doesn't happen because of the goodwill and generosity of those above, but through the struggle and sacrifice of those below. And friends, you should be ambitious, you should be courageous. Let's say this: let's build a new Britain, not a Britain of bankers and bullion boys, of spids and speculators, tax avoiders, rip-off landlords, exploiters. We'll build a Britain in the interest of those who toil and struggle. Friends, we can't afford to screw this up. Too many people are suffering. Too many people's futures depend on us winning. Let's build groups in every town and city. Remember the movement against the poll tax. That movement won, and so will we. We stand together. We fight together. Friends, we will win it together.